Hello, hello, I'm Mike Ganade and welcome to another video of our Board Game Madness series. We are in the last of our Elite 8 matchups, which are the top 8 games of my personal board game collection. And today we have the number 6 seed, Quacks of Quendlinburg, versus the number 14 seed, Azul Summer Pavilion. So what's interesting about this matchup is we have two more gateway games, sort of simple, approachable games, but we have sort of two ends of the spectrum. We have a game with very little luck, where you're picking your tiles, and a bag builder that's all about push your luck. So we have two ends of sort of the spectrum as far as luck and random chance goes as well. If you want to learn more about what these games are about, check out some of our earlier videos where we've covered these games, 2 times now at this point as they've made their way through the tournament bracket. But for this round, we're going to be focusing on each category and really trying to break down the value of the games and even look at each round in maybe a few more categories, break it down so that we can choose, from these top 8 games of my collection. These are hard choices now at this point. So as always, we're going to start with production. And production here, it sort of depends on if you're more drawn to like artwork and number of components or quality of components. So I don't think there's actually that much to dwell on. Quacks of Quendlinburg's art style is one of my least favorite things about the game. I don't like the cover. I don't like how the characters are drawn. I don't like the way the scoring board looks. But I do like the ingredients and the chips that you put in your bag, and I do like the pot that sits in front of you. But most of the components in this game are cardboard cutouts. There's a few wooden pieces to track your score and things like that. But we're talking about mostly cardboard here and very few cards. Azul Summer Pavilion has those beautiful tactile tiles that are super fun to play with. The overall aesthetic of the game is very beautiful. And while I think it's very abstract, I find the game, from a table presence, to be far superior to Quacks of Quendlinburg. Like I said, those thick, chunky tiles are just a joy to play with, and the diamonds are just as beautiful as the squares in the first game or the hexagons in the Queen's Garden version. So I think there's not a lot to dwell on here, especially when you consider these games are right around the same price point. I think the production just oozes more of that deluxe feel with Azul. And the tactile nature of it makes it more fun to play than it would be if it was a bunch of cardboard tiles, cardboard triangles to set up on your board. So I'm definitely going with Azul Summer Pavilion on production value here against Quacks. I just think it's better, and I like the overall presentation better as well. Let's go on to game mechanics though, because here it's very, very close. It really depends on sort of your player group and which spectrum you're on as far as, where this game sits. I'm not even sure if I can pick one for mechanics. I mean, both of these games are really smooth to play. Summer Pavilion is about drafting tiles and placing your tiles strategically on your board for the maximum number of points. And the order you sort of do that in and how you score additional tiles is sort of where all the combos and fun of the strategy comes into play. There are also wild tiles each round, which help you get certain goals that you're looking for to place tiles. I find the scoring much cleaner than the original Azul. I've said before, this is sort of my go-to Azul. I think this or Queen's Garden probably, just because I've played Queen's Garden less. But this is the one I've played the most of and I'm not tired of, like I am the original. So it's a really approachable game. I played it with a variety of different people, and it's a joy to play every time. The drafting nature of grabbing the tiles and messing somebody up by taking the tiles they need is great. And the biggest complaint I have about both of these games is actually the same, which is that player interaction is minimal between both of these games. In the Azul environment, there's almost no randomness. You're picking the tiles you play. The only way people are interacting with you is taking a choice before it's your turn. Otherwise, you are playing completely by yourself. and just strategizing as best you can. Similarly, in Quacks of Quedlinburg, no one's messing with you either. The only way you're interacting with other players is there's a catch-up mechanic with the rat tails, which I think helps catch people, keeps players' scores closer and doesn't let a player run away with it. And there's a couple chips that you can get and put in your pot that are competitive. And of course, you're competing each round to see who gets the furthest in their pot with your push your luck mechanic to get a sort of slight bonus from a roll of a die. But there's a lot more randomness in this game. Your bonus is a roll of the die every round. Which chips you draw, while obviously you have some control over the bag you're building and whether or not you're drawing a chip, that push your luck mechanism is ultimately a random draw, and you can just as easily bust on the first 3 chips by just being unlucky as you can draw almost no chips and get really far along in the pot. And round after round, that game is all about mitigating that luck. So if you're super averse to luck, you know, that's gonna be a problem with Quacks. But for me, that randomness and I feel like I've got agency over whether or not I'm picking up a chip, and I can count how much cherry bombs are in my pot and how much further I think I can do, and sort of count in my head how many chips and what my percentage is of busting on any given turn. Is super exciting. As you can see from the box, this game's won a ton of awards. It's a shut up and sit down recommend. It's a seal of excellence from Dice Tower. I think gameplay wise, this is a tried and true solid formula that everyone should consider putting in their collection if they like some of these mechanisms I'm talking about. Whereas this Azul is my favorite, but arguably not the best of the series. Other people will pick different versions of it. It is a fun tile drafting game, but I think mechanisms wise, you know, the more interesting side of the board is the more restrictive one. And, you know, there's not a lot of variance in strategies in the way you play it necessarily. So it's a great gateway game, but I don't think it has, I don't think it's as critical to your collection as this one. So for game mechanics, I'm going to go with Quacks. I just can't, as much as we played Azul in my house personally, I don't think it has the legs of Quacks when it comes to gameplay. It certainly doesn't have the excitement with the bag drawing. So next up, we're coming to theme. And theme is where both of these games sort of suck. Quacks ties the theme and the mechanics together okay. You know, you are drawing these ingredients out, putting them in your pot, being this sort of potion dealer who's trying to make elixirs for people, sort of quack salesman as it were, mixing together elixirs and cure-alls for people. You are drawing out these ingredients and moving around a thing, so the mechanisms and theme do blend well together, but I actively dislike the theme. I don't like the artwork. If a different illustrator did this game, it would be even higher even in a higher standing than it already is. Luckily, the gameplay and everything else about it sort of makes up for this kooky artwork, but the kooky illustrations and artwork are just not my cup of tea. And other people I've brought the game and played without, the sort of Euro look of it, I guess, has actually pushed some people away from playing it, even though when they played it, they liked it. And other people are like, what is this crazy game? When you sort of break it out and they look at this cover. And then you actually take it out and they start playing it and they're like, oh, I actually like this. But I actually think there's like some negative impressions that the box and theme brings to people. Whereas Azul, as much as the theme is sort of meh, and you get more information about the theme on the back of the box than you do playing the game, I think it is very gorgeous. It is a gorgeous abstract theme, and the tiles and everything make it much more approachable. And I don't actively dislike the way I don't actively dislike the way any of these components in this box look. Like I do some of the components here. I like the way the chips look. I like the way the recipe books look. The little potion you flip over is great. The cover stinks. The scoring board with the wacky dude on that, I don't like. And the pots are fine. And the cover of the box stinks. So for me, I think I've got to give theme to Azul, even though the theme is sort of like light at best. It's really an abstract puzzle game. The theme is very, very light. It's not a big portion of the game. This is about playing with chunky, fun tiles, just like you see on this box. It's not about being a Portuguese artisan and designing a summer pavilion. It doesn't feel that way, at least to me. But I do generally like the theme. I don't actively dislike it, so even though it's sort of meh, I'm going to give theme to Azul. Which brings us to replayability. And I actually think replayability is quite easy here. While the mileage you get out of any game that's sort of set in stone is sort of is dependent on how much you like the game. And Azul Summer Pavilion is a fantastic game, and I've played it dozens of times with tons of different people. But the variability in the game is lacking. And the fact that it is such a great game sort of makes up for that and will get you a lot of plays out of it. But the only variability you can add to this game really is flipping over the board and adding some board restrictions on your tile placements. And that's about it. Otherwise, it's just sort of how tiles are drawn into the center board you can collect from, and how tiles are drawn to each round of places and how you're playing the game. But you can follow your same general strategy in Azul every time you play. Part of the reason I like this game a lot is because I have a really strong strategy and it tends to win by going for the highest point star and building up to that, whichever color that one is. I always try to go for that complete star, and that has served me well by saving my pieces up from round to round and sort of ignoring the wild pieces. Quacks, on the other hand, also has a great core game, but the replayability is just, there's so much variability in it because you can actually change what the chips that you're putting in your bag do. And if you change those books up and those recipe cards, and it changes what the chips you're drawing does, it can completely change your strategy. And while I think the game advises you to like work with them as sets to start, it's like set A, B, C, D, there is nothing stopping you once you're more familiar with the game mixing and matching those. Like there's nothing that breaks it, especially as you become more experienced. So then you start adding even more permutations and wacky strategies you can employ in this great little push your luck game. So for me, replayability, Quacks just has it hands down, which I think, where does that put us now? Is that a tie? Do we have a tie now where Azul won production, Quacks won gameplay, Azul won theme, Quacks won replayability. So we have a tie here, and we need to go to a tiebreaker. And the things I like to bring up when we have a tiebreaker round are things like setup and teardown time. Both of these games set up pretty quickly. I would say Azul sets up a little faster because you don't need to sort through like all the tiles. You can just sort of dump them into the bag. Whereas this one, you need to create each person's starting bag of tokens, and you need to take each token out of its bag and sort of each recipe ingredient and sort of set it up in a pile. So this one does have more setup and teardown, in my opinion, a little bit more, but it's not drastically different. We're not talking about like setting up a huge map of dungeon tiles for a dungeon crawler, and or a hour setup time and a 5-minute setup time. We're talking about maybe 10 minutes of difference. It's not drastic. Teardown time similar. It's a little faster to put this one away than this one. I think gameplay-wise, do they both say about 45 minutes? Yeah, this says 30 to 45 minutes. This says 45 minutes. My inclination is this plays a little faster. I think it does play in. I would say it plays closer to 30 minutes than 45. And both games play 2 to 4 players. Both games have similar age things. So there's nothing there that's really setting them apart. And I think when it comes down to this, basically what we have here is we have a game I pushed it together and I made a weird sound with the box closing. Basically what we have here is a game that's far superior to another game. The game of Quacks is better than Azul in replayability, in mechanics. Azul is prettier and has a better production. And for me, the tiebreaker in this situation, other than other extraneous factors, like if this game took 2 hours to set up for what it was or something, then I may be more inclined to go with Azul. But the fact that this is the higher seed and this is the superior game with more replayability means it's the game that I have to recommend and to move on to the final four in this case. So Quacks of Quendlinburg is going to be the final game moving on to our final four of Board Game Madness. If you haven't checked this game out and don't have it in your collection and like Push Your Luck games, it is the Push Your Luck game of my personal collection. It's the one I always get out and play and enjoy. I definitely should get some expansions for it at this point, but I still enjoy it as it is. And with that, we're going to end the video here. I'm going to remind you to like and subscribe. Please don't miss our final 4 or 5 videos that we have coming up, or 3. We have the final 4 going head-to-head in 2 matchups, and then we have the championships. So we only have 3 more videos to find out the best game in my collection, but we've at least eliminated it to my top 4. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you in our next video.